All right. I'm so sorry about that, guys. Here, let me get the chat pulled up so I can see what we're doing. Oh my goodness, what a day. I am so sorry that I'm late. Hopefully the video is actually playing. Anyway, let me just jump right in here. Had a work call that came up here late. We got 17 people still in here. Thank you guys for hanging around. Again, I am so sorry. I got tied up in work stuff. It's just been happening a lot lately. And if you guys have noticed, I haven't been good at responding to comments lately because of that. I've just been so swamped at work. Hopefully that starts to slow down a little bit. So I'm going to start right here. If I missed your comment, I'm sorry, but since I'm not sure who's still in here right now, so we're going to start down towards the middle of the comment section right after my comment about saying I was sorry I was late for work. So I'm going to start right there. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to start answering comments. Feel free to leave your comment. If you thought the video was loading on his end, no, it wasn't your end. It was my end. And hopefully you're not seeing that pixelated video that I'm seeing on my end. Hopefully it's better. Anyway, let's see. All right, so somebody's responding to somebody else. Spencer says, Spencer Acoustics says, I have my first batch of jumbo eggs incubating. The next time we'll be putting them in lockdown. Should I candle the eggs while I'm pulling them out of the turner? If you want to candle them, that's the best time to do it. Right when you go into lockdown, that's the only time that I ever really bother with candling them. And I don't always candle the eggs, but it's not a bad idea. If you candle the eggs, any of them that just glow like a light bulb that are obviously hollow, throw them out. That's it. There's no reason to put those in your incubator and continue incubating them. They're not going to hatch. It's really kind of tricky at that point to know for sure if there's a bird in there or not because candle eggs are kind of dark. But you can obviously tell the ones that have no chance whatsoever of hatching because they will just, like I said, glow like a light bulb, basically. So yeah, that's a good time to go ahead and candle them. All right, Sean says to somebody else, I'm going to skip that one because we're short on time tonight. Where are we at here? Helen. I was upset. I missed some of the live broadcast, so I'm happy I'm here. Oh, you didn't miss anything. I'm running late. Sorry about that, guys. There's some conversations going back and forth between people. I'll let you guys have those. My quail egg died. This is from Mila. My quail eggs died. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm guessing that means you had a bad hatch. So hopefully it gets better in the future. I've got a whole series on incubating eggs, so you might watch that series. There could be a number of reasons why your quail didn't hatch. It's very hard for me to kind of troubleshoot that over live broadcast with kind of limited details. The first thing is always check your incubator temperature though. Get a couple of non-digital thermometers like dial thermometers or medical thermometers or something, are not digital. Make sure to calibrate them to make sure they're accurate. Throw them in your incubator, turn your incubator on, and then you should be able to verify. I always say get two, so you know that if any two of those any two of those thermometers, the two you put in the incubator or the one on the incubator itself, are reading the same, then you can pretty much count on that being the accurate temperature. And then you can kind of verify from there whether your incubator is reading temperature correctly or not. Maybe it says 100 degrees, but it's actually only 90. Or it's probably not going to be that far off. Or it may be it's 105 degrees or something like that. So those would be the things to check with. All right, who's that? Keto Cutie says, first litter of rabbits for me and my doe, a nice nest, fed kits, 7 little buns. Awesome, congratulations on that. I've got 7 baby rabbits that were just born yesterday, day before. So we're in the same boat. So congratulations on your first litter. I'm glad to hear they're doing well. Says any advice on getting the, this is somebody else. I'll get to that here in a second. Gingerbeard 600 says, hello, Chris. Hope all is well in your neck of the woods and staying safe. Thank you so much. All is well. Just, again, been very, very busy with work. But, again, hopefully that will slow down a little bit. I'll be able to get back on track with, getting comments answered and being on time to the live broadcasts. All right, I think my internet connection must be slow. My video looks terrible. Let me try something here. I can't figure out how. See if that comes better. All right, I think that's a little bit better. It looks better on my end anyway. Hopefully that helped it. All right, so Never End Creative says, do you recommend a minimum quail eggs in the incubator? Minimum number of quail eggs in the incubator. Good question. I don't know that it makes sense to incubate 1 egg, of course. So I don't know if there's a minimum that would be absolutely the best number to do. I would say probably somewhere around, it depends on your incubator, but I think 20 or 30 is probably about the minimum I would want to incubate at one time just to kind of guarantee I get a decent hatch out of it. I think that would probably be the best bet, but I don't know that there's actually a minimum. Good question. All right, so Saint Fernaris, I think it is, says, "Hi, Chris. Wanted to ask you if you try breeding rabbits back to the parent, and if so, did you notice any defects on doing so, such as more dying or smaller litters, or any complications? Also, is that an issue with quails?" Okay, so good question. No, you can actually breed rabbits back to their parents. You can breed father to daughter. You can breed mother to son. And there's some reasons you might want to do that. If you have some really good traits in your rabbits, that's called line breeding, and it will make those traits a little bit stronger. It could, anyway. It usually does. Now, there is a chance that oh, did my video freeze up? I think we're going. Okay. There is a chance that you're going to accentuate any kind of bad traits as well, but usually that's not a big issue. Now, you don't want to breed brother to sister, of course. Most of the time, though, breeding father to daughter or mother to son, you're not going to have any kind of issues, at least not in that one generation. Now, if you keep doing that generation over generation over generation, eventually you might introduce some bad traits or things like smaller litters or whatever. But that takes a little while, and it would be, like I said, many generations down. You shouldn't have any issues doing that in the short term anyway. And as far as with quail, no, you're not going to have any problems with that with your quail either until, like I say, many, many, many generations down the road. It takes a long time for that kind of stuff to really work into your quail. I just add a little bit of new blood to my birds every couple of years, and that's it. Get some new roosters or something like that, and that's all I have to worry about. And that's all I do, and I never have a problem. All right, Michael says, "I have a flock of 19 various types of Coturnics. I was vent sexing them when 2 of the same breed had what seemed like a seizure in my hand. I put them back in the cage. 5 minutes later, they were fine." Huh, that's interesting. Maybe they were just panicky for some reason. I don't know. I don't know that I've ever had that happen necessarily, a bird having a seizure like that. I know a lot of times if you turn them upside down, if they've got a lot of food in their crop, they will aspirate that out. Almost looks like they're vomiting or something like that, and sometimes that can probably choke them up a little bit. That may be part of the problem that they had right like that, and you put them back in the cage, they recovered from that, they're okay. That would be my first guess on that. I've never had them actually have a seizure or anything like that. I think it's probably just a coincidence that they happen to be 2 of the same breed, but interesting. All right, Lorenzo says, "What's your thoughts on fermenting quail feed?" That's been a popular question lately. I should probably just do a video on that. Get a drink here real quick. I don't have any problems with fermenting feed. I think it's probably good for your birds. There are some probiotics that, lactobacillus bacteria, I think is what it is. Same thing that's in yogurt and sauerkraut and apple cider vinegar, all that kind of stuff. And it is good for the digestive system of your animals, your birds, your rabbits, any of that kind of stuff. It's good for them, just like yogurt and sauerkraut and all that stuff's good for us. I don't personally ferment the feed because I think that the benefits of it are a little bit exaggerated. I think it's kind of like apple cider vinegar. There for a while, apple cider vinegar was magic. It would cure everything, and that's pretty exaggerated stuff. The big reason I don't ferment feed is because it's just extra work, and I just don't have that much. I don't want to put that much work in. I don't have that much time. The birds do just fine without having fermented feed. But if you want to ferment your feed, go for it. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not going to have any bad things happen because of it, as long as you don't let it mold or anything like that. And there's no reason not to do it if you want to go ahead and do it. So, all right. Dragon says, "What signs are there that the bird is old and at its end? Can these birds be harvested for meat?" Okay. Good question. It's really hard to tell how old a bird is and how, if it's near its end or anything like that, like you're saying. I think that probably the biggest sign is if you've got hens that have been consistently laying and then they start slowing down laying over a period, over a long period of time, not just take a week or 2 off, but like over a couple of months. They're not laying nearly as consistent as they were. That's kind of a sign right there. And you could definitely eat those birds. My rule of thumb is I don't eat any bird that dies because I don't know why. Like, even if it was an older bird, it just died and it had been old age, I don't eat that. That's just not going to do it. But there's nothing wrong with eating the older, more mature birds. I do it quite frequently. I'll replace my breeders every year and a half or so with new stock, just usually birds I've hatched out, and I'll raise them up. They'll become my new breeders, and I'll just process my old breeders, and then they'll go to the freezer. So, in fact, that's what I plan on doing with this next batch. I've got about 45 or so quail that just hatched out a couple of days ago in the brooder right now. So when they get up to size, I'm planning on processing my breeders, making some of these my new breeders. I've got way more than I need, so, it won't need. While I'm talking about that, I am thinking real seriously about, because of these new birds, I don't know yet if I'm going to do it or not. That's my plan, is to raise them up to become breeders, but let me back up because I'm getting a little bit scattered here. Well, I put a piece of cardboard in the incubator to separate the meat makers from the jumbo pharaohs so I can keep them straight, because you can't tell them apart. Well, they knocked that piece of cardboard down. They all got mixed together, so I have no idea which ones are the pharaohs and which ones are the meat makers. And, I got to thinking about it. If you can't tell them apart, I really can't tell them apart. There's not really any big difference between a meat maker or a jumbo pharaoh. They look the same. They produce about the same amount of eggs. They produce about the same size eggs. There's nothing really different to them. So I'm thinking I'm probably just going to leave them mixed and not worry about keeping them separate anymore. That's the plan anyway. I think I'm going to go with that. I don't know. I may go ahead and just incubate another batch and let them become the future breeders and keep them separate, but I don't know. All right. J.R. Bailey says, hey, Chris, hello from Oil Patch in central Wyoming, I think it is. Just went into lockdown today with 120 eggs. Well, good luck with those. Hopefully they all hatch, or at least a good portion of them hatch. All right. William Safford says, dragon mine get bald necks right before they die. Well, bald necks is actually a sign of them being bred. So that happens with my younger birds. It happens with my older birds. It happens with all of them. And, if it's mating season, especially if you've got a little bit more roosters than you should have, then that's pretty common. They're going to get, the back of their head is going to lose all those feathers. And that's just because when the males breed, they tend to grab the back of their neck, the feathers on the back of their head, the back of their neck, and they'll pull on them. So they'll pull them out. So that's all that is. That's not necessarily a sign of them getting old, but that's a good thought. It could be, maybe they're dying because you've got too many roosters. They're being overbred. They're being, basically just worn out, and they're dying from exhaustion, so to speak. Sounds kind of weird, but that could be the case that's happening. I don't know. All right. Never End Creative says, I have 5 3.5-week-old quail outside, 11 1.5-week quails out, 5-week-olds inside in the brooder. Will the 11 mix in fine with the rest when it's time to go outside? Yeah, they should be fine. I wouldn't worry about that. I'd just mix them together. I wouldn't worry about that at all. I think it'd be fine. All right. Mooney says, good morning, sir. Have a great day. Thank you. I don't know where you're at that it's morning. It's evening here, but good morning to you, too. New Mexico Dust Bunny says, can you explain a little bit about line breeding, please? Yeah, line breeding is just breeding, like I said, your parents to the children. So, let's say you have a buck that has really good traits. Is a good sized rabbit, maybe, whatever it is you really, really like about that buck. Really good temperament, really good size. And in turn, you've got a doe that produces big litters, is a really good mom, has a good temperament, easy to handle. So you really like those two rabbits and you want to continue those traits in your herd. Then what you would do is when you breed them, you would take either one of the sons becomes a new breeder and breeds back to the mother, or you would take one of the daughters, breed that back to the father, which is probably more common. Breed that back to the father so you can continue those traits, hopefully, down the line. So that is really how most breeds of things have been developed over the time. Dog breeds, rabbit breeds, for example. Any of that kind of stuff has been basically from line breeding. They've isolated certain genes that create certain results, and then they've line bred those into until it becomes an isolated gene, and that becomes the new breed, the new standard, or whatever it is. So I know that's not a great explanation. I'm not a biologist. I'm not a genealogist, but is it a genealogist? Is that what you call that? Gene doctor, I guess. Anyway, hopefully that gives you an idea of what it is. It's a pretty common practice. It's actually something that, is really good to do if you're looking at getting into, bigger time production and really getting serious about managing a rabbit. I personally don't bother with doing all that. I just tend to buy rabbits whenever my rabbits get old. I buy a new breeder set and those become my new rabbits. If they're not any good, then I send them to the freezer and get new ones, So I just I'm lucky enough to be able to get, rabbits pretty easily usually, although lately it's been a little tricky, but I haven't needed them. So it hasn't been a big issue for me. All right, Never End Creative says, how much time a day do you find yourself caring for rabbits? Wondering because I've got quail now and they're fairly easy to care for, and thinking about adding a few rabbits. Not long. On average, I probably spend about 15 to 20 minutes a day with my rabbits, and that's just because I spend a little more time than I need to. As far as just going out and feeding them in the mornings and making sure they've got water, that's a 10-minute job at the most. And that's really all they absolutely have to have. But I do tend to go by and check on them in the evenings. Occasionally, like they'll have ear mites. I'll have to treat for ear mites, which is another 5 or 10 minutes a day. So you're looking at 15 minutes or so a day. It's really not that much work. All right. Ricky says, how long did you give your Cornish cross chickens constant feed? Good question. For about 2.5, 3 weeks almost, until they went out to the outside chicken tractor. So when I were in the brooder, they were about almost 3 weeks old when I moved them to the outside chicken tractor. And when they went to the outside chicken tractor, which was last week basically, or this week, this week, Sunday basically, is when I moved them out. Then they start getting 12 hours of feed. I pull it away from them at night, and then I give it back to them in the morning. All right. Val says, I have 6-week-old Caternix quail. When will they start laying? When they're good and ready. That's a smart aleck answer, but generally they're going to start laying between 8 to 12 weeks. You got to make sure that you have the conditions right, and really that is put them in a place where you're not moving them around a lot. Like, you don't want to move them from one cage to another all the time. That stresses them out. That'll prolong them not laying. The other thing is make sure they have enough light. If they're outside and you live in North America, they probably do right now. We're just getting now to where it's 14 hours a day of daylight. They need 14 hours a day of light in order to be able to lay consistently. So it looks on my end, this is off topic of that. On my end, it looks like the video is getting a little bit grainy. So I'm sorry, it's probably a bandwidth issue. There's not much I can do to speed that up. So apologize for that, but I'm going to keep going and do my best to answer your guys' questions. So anyway, so again, if you've got 14 hours a day of light, you've got them in a place where that's their permanent home. They've been left alone there for a couple of weeks. They should start laying when they're probably 8 weeks old. It may take them up to 12 weeks old. When they first start laying, you'll probably get pretty inconsistent results. Like they may lay, you may get, like, say you have 10 hens, you may get like 4 or 5 eggs one day, and then the next day only get 2. And then the next day you may get 6 or 8, and then the next day only get 1, and then they may go a day without one. But usually after about a week and a half of that, they'll get to where they're laying pretty much every day, every bird. So hopefully that answers that question for you. All right. Neverend says, what uses do rabbit fur have other than clothes? Good question. I haven't found any real good uses for that. A lot of people use them for crafts. But I personally, when I'm processing rabbits, they're usually about 8 weeks old. And it's during the summer most of the time, not necessarily. Anyway, a rabbit that you want to use for clothing or have good pelts that you could sell or any of those kinds of things usually needs to be an older rabbit, fully mature, and have its winter coat in. So usually when you're processing, young rabbits at 8 weeks old, their skin is too thin at that point for the pelt to be really used for much of anything other than just craft purposes. But again, I don't really save my hides. I don't tan them or any of those kinds of things. So, there may be somebody else has found some good uses for them. There might be. All right. Enzo says, just had 20 quail chicks the other day. Hatch, fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Congratulations on your hatch and well done. All right, random Brandon says, do you have a fixed hatch, grow, harvest schedule you follow? No, I just kind of do it whenever I want to. I do tend to hatch pretty regularly in the summertime, but no, it's not like on a regular schedule or anything like that. All right. William Safford says, button-up shirts 2 weeks in a row. You may have to change your name to slightly formal. Well, this is my work attire. This is what I wore to work today, and I didn't have time to change when I came home, so I just wore it to the live broadcast. Actually, on Thursday nights, you'll quite often find me in work attire. All right, Never In Creative says, I live here in North Carolina, and it gets fairly hot during the summer. I have a shed with windows. Would it be okay to keep rabbits in, or should I keep them outside under shade? It says, I found a Rex and a California mixed breed. Would you recommend those, or a purebred for the first time meat rabbits? Rex and California should be fine. They should make fine meat rabbits, as long as it's a standard Rex, not a mini Rex, of course. They should be a good meat rabbit mix. If you got a New Zealand around, that would be a good one as well. But that's fine. You could definitely start with a Rex and a California. I like Californias quite a bit. I don't have a lot of personal experience with Rex, but I know that they do make a decent meat rabbit, so nothing wrong with that. As far as putting them in the shed, I think I would put them outside. If you can find a place that's very shady outside to keep the cages, I think that's probably better. Inside a shed, even with windows open, it's going to get hot and it's going to get really, really stuffy, and they really need the airflow being outside. If you have a place that you can, put them where they're going to be protected from the weather when it comes, and, in the shade, not in direct sun, all those kinds of things. I do know a lot of people that have put them in sheds and put in window air conditioning units, and I think that the rabbits are probably really, really happy in that environment. But there's quite a bit of expense with running a window air conditioner all the time, and I don't know if you want to incur that or not. So I would personally try to find a place outside in the shade, assuming that you have some kind of structure that you can close up if storms come, so that you can protect them from that. All right, New Mexico Dust Bunny says, what about siblings from separate litters? No, you don't want to breed siblings together at all. I assume you're talking about rabbits. No, don't breed siblings together at all. It doesn't matter if they're from different litters or not. If they're from the same mother or father, you don't want to breed them together. That is too close to the gene pool, and you will almost definitely end up with some problems. Boris says, hello, Chris. Hello to you, Boris. CCMD Trapper says, video looks like it's 70s dubbed Japanese movie. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. There's only so much I can do with the bandwidth, and that's just it. Probably just a limitation of the internet speeds. I do the best I can with it. All right, J.R. Bailey says, Chris, I'm planning on using a clear 100-watt heat lamp for my brooder. Will that work? Probably. I don't know. Hook it up and see that it gets hot enough. I think I used a 250-watt heat lamp bulb, and I used red ones mostly, but clear ones are going to work just fine. There's no reason you have to have red. I'm just not sure 100-watt is going to be warm enough for them. It depends on where you've got them, though. If you've got them outside and it's 100 degrees, then you're not going to have any problems. But if you've got them inside in a 70-degree house, it may be, I don't know if you'll be able to get it warm enough. You'll just have to check. They need about 100 degrees for the first week and a half, and then you can start lowering it down about 5-10 degrees from there every week or every couple of days or so. So I would just say, like I said, test it out, see if it heats your brooder up enough. That would be my suggestion. Neverend says, would you recommend keeping a ice pack in a quail hutch to cool them off? I don't know that does that much good, honestly. I know I've tried. I don't bother with the quail too much. They do just fine in the heat. It's not as big of a deal for them. The rabbits do tend to struggle in the heat. And I've put in frozen 2-liter pop bottles. Fill them with water, stick them in the freezer and freeze them and throw them in their cage. They don't really seem to use them. I know some people talk about their rabbits just love them. They'll lay on them, and my rabbits don't. They just kind of ignore them, and they only last for a couple of hours. About maybe 4 or 5 hours at the most. But when it's 100 degrees out, they don't last that long, and they're completely melted and not ice anymore. So who knows? All right. Chinky Baby says, what if my jumbo Japanese could turn hen is almost bald, 3-to-1 male? That's a little bit, that just means she's being bred a lot. That's really what it means. And that is a little bit on the low side of how many hens you should have for one male. I like to go 4 to 5 myself to keep the hens from being overbred too much. But, it's fine. You can do 3 hens to 1 male. It just means that she's being bred a whole lot. If it bothers you, you can, leave the male in for a week and then pull him out for a week and then put him back in for a week and then pull him out for a week and then put him back in for a week. You can rotate the male in and out. The hens will tend to stay fertile for about 10 days after they were bred. So if he's in there for a week and then you take him out for a week and then you put him back in for a week, you should still get fertile eggs all the time. It should be fine. It's just going to be a matter of where do you put the rooster in the meantime. And he's probably going to be really noisy. He's going to crow a whole lot trying to attract hens to him while he's all by himself. But, you can do that if you want to. Esther says, do you have a recommended brooder bulb wattage? Yeah, I think I use 250 watt. I think you probably answered that question after you asked that. But anyway, Spencer says, hey, Chris, thanks for your help. I have lots of family in your area, only a few in Joplin Diamond. Most are near Sheldon and Nevada. That's not too far away. Ever heard of Jones, Twine, and Boots? That's my aunt and uncle. Jones, Twine, and Boots. I don't know if I have or not. It sounds somewhat familiar, but I may have. I'm not sure. All right. William says the sound is 7 seconds off. Yeah, I'm sorry. Mooney says, sir, I'm hatching eggs with a manual incubator, but the chicks' legs are not good after they are born. Okay, so what you're talking about probably, it sounds like splayed leg, and that's probably because your incubator is not incubating at the right temperature. That would be my biggest guess. Excuse me. Grab another drink there. Get back to this. Okay, probably your incubator, that would be my guess. Your incubator is not incubating at the right temperature. It's probably running a little bit on the low side, which is causing your birds to hatch out a little bit later, be a little bit weaker, and therefore they're hatching out with leg problems. The That's the first thing I would check again. I already kind of talked about that, so I'm not going to go into those details again. You can do a few things with birds that have splayed legs. If you can get them, force their legs underneath them, sometimes you can fix that, and that you can do that with. Some people do it with a shot glass, put the bird in a shot glass and have their legs hold them underneath them for 12, 18, 20 hours, whatever. You can do that with some people that make splints out of like Band-Aids, basically cut strips out of them, tape them around their legs to where their legs are forced to hold underneath them. There's a couple of different ways that you can kind of address that, but it is kind of hard to fix and you got to catch it pretty quick. But again, my guess would be go back to your incubator and make sure it's incubating at the right temperature. That's probably the issue. All right. Keto Cutie says, never end. Also in North Carolina, I'm using mutts currently. Mine are in deep shade of shed and trees. Using ice bottles and putting wet towels in front of the cage also tends to help. Yeah, I've tried, basically what you're talking about is like a swamp cooler, putting a wet towel on the cage so it's evaporative cooling. It doesn't work here because in the summertime we've got like 80% humidity, so it's just not that effective. If you live in a drier climate, it works really, really well, and it's a good thing to do for sure. All right, Never End says, will rabbits be all right if I'm away for a weekend and leave extra food and water, or should I have someone care for them while I'm away? If you're just talking about the weekend, they should be fine. Just give them enough water and food for the weekend, they'll be fine. All right, where are we at here? Michael, after Vince sexing, I have 3 males and 16 hens. Now I'll have a lower fertilization rate, but I prefer my hens to have less breeding pressure. I've had males in the past hurt hens from overmating. Yeah, that's probably good. You've got 3 males. You should be fine. That's like 1 to 5, 5.5, 1 to 5.25, something like that. Rooster to hen ratio, something like that. So that should be fine. I bet your fertility is not that bad at all. All right, Val says, when do young male coternics start mating with the females? About 7 to 8 weeks, somewhere right around in there. They tend to hit sexual maturity, and that's when they start breeding as well. All right, Never End says, can you keep 2 does and a buck together all the time outside in a tractor? No, I would not do that. That's not a good idea at all. Does especially tend to get a little bit territorial of their cage space. They're also going to get really sick of being bred all the time by that buck. There's a good chance they're going to turn on him. They can be very, very aggressive. They can castrate your males. It's not a good idea. Plus you don't know when they're going to have babies, when they're not. It's just your best to keep them separate, really. Rabbits are not really colony animals. And I know some people keep rabbits in colonies. They have groups of them and they do just fine together. But really, rabbits are solitary animals, and they don't pack in the wild. So and these are domestic rabbits. They have a little different traits. Again, they could be kept in colonies, but you're best keeping them separate if you're going to keep them in a confined space. Outside in Georgia with a $2 super chat. Thank you. And just says thanks. Well, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. All right, Gingerbeard says, I'm going to have about 22 quail eggs in the incubator, cooking right now. Also, a new 3-day-old litter of 8 from a New Zealand, I'm not sure, chocolate buck and a harlequin doe. Awesome, congratulations on the new rabbits, and good luck with your hatch. All right, Dragon says, a few of my females are also losing feathers on their back, not just their head and their neck. In the past, those that died had missing back feathers. Is that normal, or could they be sick? They could be molting. That's a pretty common thing that happens when they molt. It's usually nothing to worry about. Give them about 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks. If you aren't using a high-protein feed, try to find one, up their protein a little bit during that time. They should be fine. They'll grow back pretty quick. That sounds like what it is anyway. Probably not sick. Probably not a big issue. Nothing to worry about. All right, Melanie says, just got my first 50 eggs. Wish me luck. Well, good luck. Hopefully they go well. And Chris from Arkansas. We're just pretty much neighbors. Hello to you. Thanks for joining. All right, Lisa says, thank you so much for your videos. I have 4-week-old quail and just went outside today. First time having quail. Awesome. Good, congratulations on your new birds. 4 weeks old. They should be doing just fine out in the outside. Look at that. Melanie with a $1.99 super chat. Thank you, Melanie. Says, great advice. Thanks. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. But yeah, your bird should do just fine at 4 weeks old. Should be plenty ready to move outside. And good luck with them. Hopefully they do well. Never End says, do you know anything about these cheap $30 incubators on Amazon? No, I don't have any personal experience with them. I personally would probably stay away from a $30 incubator. Who knows? Maybe they work just fine. but I don't have experience with them, and I kind of believe you get what you pay for. I think I'd probably browse, Craigslist or something like that, and see if you can find a used, Little Giant or something like that. You can probably get it for not much more than that. And if there is anything wrong with it, you've got to, you can just contact the company. They'll send you replacements parts, like if the thermostat goes out or something. All right. Never says, do you sanitize your quail hutch and equipment, and how often? And says, sorry for a lot of questions. I'm new at this. It's no problem at all. That's exactly what this broadcast is for, is to answer questions, to do my best to help you guys that are new at that. So don't apologize for that. It's perfectly all right. No, I don't really sanitize my equipment, my quail hutches. Now I wash stuff off. So like, when the feeder comes out of the brooder box, I wash it, some soap and water, set it out in the sun for a couple of days. So that kind of sanitizes it, yes. But I'm not like fanatical about keeping things super, super, super clean. I very seldom ever actually wash out the quail hutch. I just don't do it. If something happens where a big pile of feces builds up in there or something, then yeah, I'll clean that out for sure. But I don't go through and like sanitize it or anything like that. It's not necessary. I don't find it necessary. I do wash out my incubator between hatches, but again, I just do that with like dish soap and water, and then I spray it down with my Listerine water mixture, and that's it. That's all I do. All right, JR says, never creative, save up your money and buy a Hoverbaiter 1588 and use a Little Giant egg turner. The Hoverbaiter Genesis is air circulated, great controls. Yep, that's probably good advice, JR. All right, Chris says, don't forget to hit the like button, peeps. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Hello to you outside in Georgia. Hello to you, Pierre, from North Korea. Interesting. Thanks for joining from North Korea. Not sure how that happened, but great. Anyway, Vol says, everyone leave a like on the stream. Thank you. And hello to you, ghosts. And let's see, Ladrell says, hi, Chris and all. I finally got my 2-dose standard Rex. Now looking for a buck. Well, good luck with finding the buck, and congratulations on your new dose. Danielle, how are we doing on time here? About 7 minutes left. I wish I could stay late tonight, guys, but it's been a long day. I got to get off here at 8 o'clock, call it good, and go spend an hour with my wife before bedtime. Danielle, I think it is, says, hello, my rabbit's first babies are now 5 weeks. When's a good time to put her back in with my buck? Depends on when you want to have babies again. 5 to 6 weeks is probably a pretty good time to go ahead and put her back in. Go ahead and breed her. You're going to move the rabbits off probably when they're 6 to 8 weeks old. And that gives her about a week or two without babies before she has another litter. So it's probably a good time to do that. Now, me personally, I don't breed. I'm not going to breed mine again until fall because it's just too hot out there right now. We're already up to like 90 degrees, and I don't want to have my rabbit pregnant during the heat of summer. I think it's a little too stressful on them. All right, Jesse says, whoa, look at that, a $9.99 super chat. Says, thank you so much for these live chats. This is from Never in Creative. I've got to scroll down and answer that real quick. Thank you so much for these live chats. I've been watching the last few weeks. Very helpful for my quail journey, or my journey with quail. One last question. Are there any dog treats you can make from quail? Well, it depends on your dog. Yeah, you can absolutely give your dog any of the leftover stuff that you process from a quail, from the internal organs to the feet, to the wings, the feathers, if they like them. Any of those kinds of things can be done. I have not found anything that really preserves well. I guess you could probably grind up, like maybe some of the organs, the liver and the heart, and probably cook that down into some kind of dog treat. I'm guessing. I don't see why it wouldn't work. In fact, you could probably just, cook them, boil them if you wanted to, make it real easy, and then throw them in, Ziploc bags, maybe flash freeze them, lay them out on a, like a cookie sheet or something, stick them in your freezer and freeze them so they don't freeze in a big ball in a Ziploc bag. And then just put them in a Ziploc bag, throw them in the freezer, and pull a handful of them out every week to thaw out and give those to your dog as treats. I don't see why that wouldn't work. I don't know if you could dehydrate it or not. That might work. I don't know. I will tell you, rabbit ears are fantastic dog treats. When you process rabbits, I always keep the ears and just throw them on a baking sheet in the oven, about 100 degrees or so, and dehydrate them basically. And Danielle, $2 with a super chat saying thank you for the info. Well, thank you for the $2 super chat. I appreciate it. Anyway, rabbit ears, dehydrate in the oven, just 100 degrees or whatever, with the door just cracked open for, 6 or 8 hours or something like that, till they're hard and crunchy. Dog loves them. They're fantastic. So there's a couple of ideas on that. I don't have any other good recipes for quail. I don't save the quail stuff for the dog. It just a little bit too much work. But anyway, who knows? All right. Jesse says, "Hey, just hatched 8 chicks using your videos. Thank you. Well, thank you for watching, and congratulations on your new birds." I think I already answered that, didn't I? But that's okay. Ghost says, "How often do you have to feed the newborn rabbits? They're on day 5." How often do we have to feed newborn rabbits? They're on day 5. You shouldn't have to feed newborn rabbits at all. The mothers should be feeding them. It's very rare for a mother not to feed her rabbit or babies. If she does, if she does abandon them and doesn't feed them, that's really bad mothering instincts. And I would think really hard about getting rid of her and getting a new rabbit. But no, you shouldn't have to actually feed them at all. In fact, hand feeding rabbits is very, very difficult to do. Usually doesn't actually work out very well. But if you wanted to hand feed them yourself, it would be a couple of times a day, probably 2 to 3 times a day. You would look at trying to hand feed them. All right. Garfield left some emojis. I'm not sure what they mean exactly, but one of them's a thumbs up, so hopefully that's good. Dixon's Dairy Goats. Hello, Chris from Clayton, Idaho. Hello to you. Thanks for joining. JR says, "Thanks for answering, Chris. Chris, I just worry that the 250 would cook them fairly easily. They'll be in my front bedroom, which is on the south side of the house, and gets hot in the afternoon." Okay, well, good point. If you live in an area that, or if you have a a room that stays warmer, then yeah, you may not need a 100-watt bulb. One thing, I've got the what is it, the ITC? I can't remember, the wireless, connected ITC temperature controller. It's fantastic. You just set the temperature that you want it to be, and you put the incubator or the temperature probe in there, and you plug your lights into it, and it turns them off. Make sure it never gets over 100 degrees or whatever, and it kicks back on at like 95. So stays between 95 and 100 degrees. It's really, really nice to have. So if you can afford it, I don't think they're that expensive, $30, $40, something like that. It may be worth an investment. I think I've got links to those in my Amazon shop as well, but highly recommend. I think it's great. Keith says, "I use a 60-watt bulb in a small tote and it works fine indoors." Well, there you have it. Maybe 100 watts is going to work just fine. Dragon says, "I have my males and my females in the same cage, but separate from each other by hardware cloth. Could this stress the birds out too much being so close, but so far?" Well, it could. I don't think it's a big concern, though. I wouldn't worry about it. Waylon says, "Hey, just stopped by to say hi." Well, thanks for stopping by. Hello to you. Oh, my goodness, we're about out of time already. I'm going to skip some comments that are addressed to other people. Beef for dinner. It says, "Hey, Chris, I had 99 eggs in the incubator that were started on Sunday and hatched out on Tuesday, day 15. Any idea why they were 3 days early?" That's actually not that early. If you read everything, it says they're going to hatch out on day 18, but most of the time it's really more like day 17. So day 15 is not that unheard of. But usually that's going to be an indicator that your incubator temperature might have been just a little bit on the high side, like maybe a degree too high. It's usually not a problem. It doesn't cause a lot of issues, but it does sometimes cause them to hatch out a little bit early. If you had a little bit of a lower hatch rate, though, that could be part of the reason right there. That would be my first guess on it anyway. So again, a couple of calibrated thermometers, throw them in your incubator, test it out, see if it, don't do it when their eggs are in it. Wait till they're all done hatching. And just verify that your incubator is reading the right temperature. You may have to adjust it down just a tad bit. Be careful, though. You don't want to make huge adjustments. You don't want to go down like 5 degrees or anything like that. Just a little bit. It's probably just a degree, maybe too high. All right. Where are we at here? Waylon says, "Hey, I have to get off. God bless." Well, God bless you too. Thank you very much. Mario says, "My 4 female and 2 male rabbits are 8 weeks old and in 2 cages. When should I put them in their individual cages to prepare them to mate?" All right, 4 female and 2 male rabbits are 8 weeks old and in 2 cages. Usually by about 12 weeks old, I would have them separated out. They're not going to be ready to mate until they're about 6 months old, but you want to separate them at about 12 weeks. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. All right, New Mexico Dust Bunny says, "Another breeding question. Can you breed rabbits together that share one parent? Example, same sire, different dame." You can do that. It's probably not best practice. I don't like to breed siblings at all. But if they're just, one parent of each, you can probably do that. What you don't want to do is continue. You wouldn't want to keep their babies as breeders and breed back into you would want to just not breed those babies. So you wouldn't want that to get worse. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, Michael says, thanks for all the great info and helping us become more self-sufficient. Well, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate that. Waylon says, we have 100 quail incubating. Should be hatched in 2 days. Well, good luck with that. I hope it goes well. Jay Thompson says, hello, South Carolina in the house. Thanks for joining us. There's one to Waylon. I'm going to skip those. And then there's a couple of hearts there. Ghosts General says, okay, thanks. Mooney says, good morning, sir. I'm hatching eggs, but they born with bad legs. What is my mistake? Manually rotating incubator. I think I already addressed that for you. How old, this is Robert, says, how old can you move quail from brooder to a hutch? I think you mean like how young can they be when you move them? It depends a little bit on the temperature outside, the weather outside. I'll get this question answered, then we got to shut this down. But it depends a little bit on what your temperature is outside. If it's summertime, the night times are not getting down below like 75 degrees, something like that, then you're going to be fine to move them out at like 2.5 weeks old, somewhere right around in there. As soon as they feather out, they can go outside, no problem. If it's wintertime and it's getting down colder than, say, 50 degrees or something like that, I would leave them till they're about 3 weeks old, maybe even 4 weeks old. Just give them a little bit of time. But usually at 2.5 weeks old, something like that, in the summertime when it's not getting down below like 70 degrees at night, they're fine to go out at 2.5 weeks old. All right. Oh, and it's Waylon from Nacogdoches. So, all right. I got to take care of this one. I got to wrap this one up, guys. Sorry I was late tonight. Hopefully next week will be better. Won't be quite as busy. Hopefully things will start slowing down. I'm trying to get back in there and get to answering all the comments, but it's just been so busy. I'm up starting work at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I haven't had breaks in the day like I usually do. That's usually whenever I'm answering those comments. So be patient with me. I'm sorry if I haven't gotten to your comment. I'm going to do my best to catch back up. I probably won't get all the ones I missed, but I'll stay current maybe going forward. So anyway, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for joining tonight. Thank you for all the super chats. And we will see you guys again next week. Take care.